the PowerPoint.
All right. So we've been moving kind of fast, and we're trying to get out of the chemistry stuff. I'm not going to hold you responsible for like knowing these molecules or anything. I'm only just trying to show you um, a type of molecule called an carbohydrate. Sorry, hydrocarbon. So these are hydrocarbons, all three of these. Um, so it's just kind of showing you what it looks like. You know, the black is the carbon, and the hydrogen is the white, and the over here you see the dashes in between the carbons and the hydrogens. That means covalent bonds. So that means that they're sharing electrons. And so there's rules when you put these together. Carbon makes 4 bonds, hydrogen can only make 1. So you imagine carbon is having like 4 arms, so it could grab onto 4 different things. All right, so if you're looking here at this first one, carbon's grabbing onto 4 different hydrogens with each of its 4 arms. Right? Hydrogen only has 1 arm. That's all it can grab onto. So there's never going to be 2 things coming out of hydrogen. So if you look down here at this bottom one, you notice that carbon has used 2 of its arms to grab onto another carbon. So it's, in other words, it's sharing 2 electrons with another carbon. And then because of that, there's only 2 bonds left. This carbon can only make 4. So if you look at each C, there's only going to be 4 dashes coming out of each C. So these are just different like versions of it. Hold on. Sorry. I didn't tell I was starting class. So this is just telling you these are the 4 atoms that are important to us, and so this is how many bonds each of them can make, right? So hydrogen can only make 1 bond. It's only sticking. You'll only see 1 dash come out of it, or it only grabs onto 1 thing, right? Oxygen can grab onto 2, nitrogen 3, and carbon 4. So carbon is like the most valuable one out of these. So carbon's very important for things that are living. So anything that's living, we call it organic. Anything that's carbon based, anything with, this is the best way to say it, anything with carbon. Anything with carbon's organic. So if you think about carbon dioxide, it's got carbon. It's organic. So think about water. Water is H2O. It's inorganic, not organic, inorganic, because there's no carbon in it. So I know organic, we think of like organic food and stuff. This is a different, like in chemistry, does it have carbon or not? That's it. It has carbon, it's organic. So anything that was living or that was once living, like your food, is organic. Even if you think about like things that are made from plastic, plastic's organic because it's made from oil, and oil's made from dead dinosaurs, and dinosaurs were living. So it's organic. So remember these rules. Nitrogen's going to attach to up to 3 things. Oxygen's going to attach to 2 things, and carbon's going to attach to 4 things. These here, this is the base of the 4 different types of molecules that I'm going to want to talk about. They all have this as a base. So these are called carbon skeletons. I don't care. You don't have to care about the shape or how many carbons or how long or short they are. None of that matters. The only thing that you should be able to look at here is that you look at these and you say, Oh, it has carbons and hydrogens. That's it. It's a hydrocarbon. It's all you need to be concerned about. In my other notes, I was using the Mr. Potato Head analogy, and I was saying that, like, the potato part of Mr. Potato Head, this is the carbon skeleton, the hydrocarbon. Then we're going to attach, shut up. Then we're going to attach different things to it to make it look like a different molecule. Like, how can we tell a carbohydrate from a lipid? In other words, how can you tell something like starch from something like olive oil, right? I mean, when you're talking about like the molecule, right? So the answer is I mean, you'll see the answer. The answer is like the oxygen and the okay. I already see that I'm boring you. Okay, look at this. These are carbon skeletons. Done. You know, do they have carbons surrounded by hydrogens? Yes, they're hydrocarbons. That's it. That's all you need to know. I'm going to skip this. Okay, so these are carbon skeletons. I'm going to want you to know this one up here and this one down here. So let's talk about this one up here. So if you notice this carbon skeleton or hydrocarbon up here, it's got 4 carbons and it's got 10 hydrogens. So if you count the hydrogens around it, it's going to be 10, right? So a way I could write this, I could say C4H10 just means 4 carbons and 10 hydrogens, right? So, well, if you look at both of these, they're the same as far as carbons and hydrogens, right? But the shape is different. Because the shape's different, it will act different. So we call these isomers. When you see the word iso, you think of like the same. And when you see mer, that mer means like part, same part. I don't know. But anyway, these are called structural isomers. Same stuff in them, different shape. That's it. That's all it means. This one in the middle, geometric, in reality, we don't come across these. So I don't care if you know it. It's not really practical. Structural isomers, yeah, we come across those. So just know them. Okay, this bottom one, enantiomer. The only thing you need to know about that is mirror image. It's a mirror image. So sometimes you'll run across enantiomers. Sometimes they mess up drugs. It looks the same, right? It's got the same shape. Well, there we go. There's one, L-dopa and D-dopa, right? So it's the same shape. It's got the same atoms in it. That's these circles are going to represent the atoms, right? So it's got the same stuff in it. It's just the mirror image. So it's not going to really work, right? Sometimes they'll screw up like Ritalin and things like that, right? So these are enantiomers. Same shape, same stuff in them, mirror image. So enantiomer, structural isomer. Oh, I guess you know what? That's even like a more fitting example. So if you look at a lot of our um, um, sex hormones, so like estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, you know those, and even vitamin D is something that's kind of similar. Um, they're very close. They're very close to each other. Some of them are actually enantiomers, right? So they're all made out of cholesterol. But anyway, I know this now. Now that I'm looking at this, I know this is probably confusing. So, okay, let me go back. Does anyone have any questions about this? Like, do you get what you're supposed to understand? all you need to know is that you see carbon atoms. These all have carbon atoms, and they're all bonded with hydrogens. And that's all you see here is carbons and hydrogens. And therefore you say, oh, that's a carbon skeleton, or that's a hydrocarbon. That's it. I don't care about butane or isobutane or propane. It's not important. Right? So okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take these carbon skeletons and we're going to do stuff to them. We're going to make slight changes to this, and that will give it different properties. So like right now, what I could tell you about all of these is that they don't mix with water, right? They're not water soluble, right? But now we're going to do a couple things to them. So these are called functional groups. Let me let this person in. Okay, I guess. Let me go back to my functional groups. These are functional groups, and let me see if I can make it larger. No, I can't. They're hard to see, but what we're going to do is we're going to take that carbon skeleton, and if you look over on the right, you see the part that's not in blue, you can see the carbon skeleton. It's just a hydrocarbon, that's all it is. And we're doing different things to it to give it different properties. So I'm going to want you to know these, especially the first four functional groups, because we use the first four. Well, actually, we use all of these a lot. So I'd like you to know all of them. So the first functional group we're going to look at is called a hydroxyl. And there it is. You see it in blue over to the right. So what we've done here is just added an oxygen in there. Now, what they're not really showing you here is that between the oxygen and the hydrogen, between that O and that H, that's a covalent bond. They didn't bother putting it in there though, because it's like a shorthand, right? So they won't write the dash between letters, but if you see two letters together, like if you see a COOH, like if you see those letters together, you'll know in your head that there's covalent bonds, right? Because no one said anything. They just put COOH or they just put OH or whatever. Or CO. Even if you look like something like CO2, well, how's that bonded together? Nobody told you anything. It's a covalent bond, right? That's what you default to. So between this O, this oxygen, and this hydrogen, there's a covalent bond. So let me ask you another question, which you could just answer to yourself. What kind of covalent bond is between this O and this H? Right here. I was going to give you a second to think about it. You should know by now. I'm going to ask you what kind of covalent bond it is. Or you should have said polar. And you should know what that means. So what that means is they're not sharing their electrons equally. So if you look at this part that's in blue, the OH, that's the hydroxyl functional group. They're not sharing their electrons equally. That means that this H has a little bit of a positive pull, right? There's a little bit of a positive charge there at that H. And there's a little bit of a negative charge over at on the O side. Right, so that makes it mix with water. So a hydroxyl functional group makes this thing water soluble, whereas before it wasn't. So that's it. So what should you know at this point? You should know that hydroxyl functional group makes things water soluble, and you should know what it looks like. So here it's in blue. It doesn't matter where it is. for us, for biology. We don't care where it is. We just care that it exists, right? This hydroxyl could be on the other side of the molecule. It could be on top. It could be on bottom. There could be 3 of them, 5 of them, 1 of them. Doesn't matter. If you see it, it's water soluble. Done. We don't care how many there are. For biology, if you're doing chemistry, it matters, but not for us. We just care, does it exist or does it not exist? Where it is, how many, doesn't matter. Right? So there it is. You see one of them. It looks like it's over on the right side. I don't even know what this molecule is. Yes, I do. Obviously, it's telling you it's alcohol, but you don't have to know what the molecule is. We don't care about that. That's for chemistry. Just you see it. There's a hydroxyl. This whole molecule is water soluble. Finished. That's all you need to know. What is difficult for you is the names, right? Because you got to learn these new names, right? So, well, you could think of it this way. If you look at the word hydroxyl, hydro is the first part of the word hydrogen, and then oxy, O-X-Y, is the first part of the word oxygen, and it's really a hydrogen and oxygen, right? So hydroxy, and then an L, hydroxyl. Okay, the second one, carbonyl. So it's the word carbon with a YL, right? So it's this carbon stayed here. Well, it doesn't matter if it stays or not. It's an oxygen, and this might be hard to see, but this is a double covalent bond. So it means that oxygen sharing 2 electrons. Remember, oxygen's got like 2 arms, right? So it's using both of its bonds to grab onto the carbon. Instead of oxygen grabbing onto one thing and one thing, it's using both of its spaces that it has open to grab onto carbon. So that's all it is. You will find these a lot in carbohydrates. That's one of the molecules we're going to talk about is carbs, right? So when I see this molecule, I'm thinking carbs. I'm thinking carbohydrates. So if you look at this one here and the one below it, they both have carbonyls. You see here that they're in 2 different forms. So in this case, it's at the end of the molecule. And in this case, it's not at the end. It happens to be like in the middle. I mean, there's only 3 carbons on here anyway. Look, here's like another thing. When we talk about like how big a molecule is or how small it is, we always just say it in terms of carbons. For example, like this first molecule here, it's a 2-carbon molecule. That's it. That's how we can kind of get a size on it, right? And the one below, it's a 3-carbon molecule. This is a 4-carbon molecule, like that. That's all we do, right? So it's a 3-carbon molecule. So, I mean, it's either in the middle or it's on one of the ends anyway, but it matters. So there's 2, it's in 2 forms. If it's on the end of the molecule, it's called an aldehyde. And I've got this in the other video that I made. And then if it's not on the end, it's called a ketone. Ketone is a word that you will probably come across in the future. So that's carbonyl, found in carbohydrates. So at this point, you just look at this molecule and you say that's a hydrocarbon. And then you say, oh, there's a carbonyl attached to it. That's it. That's all you need to know at this point. So let's do the third one, which is actually like a combination of these other 2. Look, here's a hydroxyl and here's a carbonyl, and they're both attached to the same carbon. So we're going to combine the words. We're going to combine the word carboxyl. Well, I said it, carbonyl and hydroxyl, right? Carboxyl. So carb for carbon and oxy for oxygen. This is a combination of the previous 2 words. So carboxyl. Carboxyl makes things acidic. So you're looking at this and you're saying, well, there's my carbon, my hydrocarbon, the carbon skeleton. There's a hydroxyl. Okay, this thing, whatever it is, although it's telling you here it's vinegar, but it's telling you here, it doesn't matter what it is. You see this carboxyl in blue, it's acidic. So done. Don't worry about like over here it's saying like how it's ionized and non-ionized. Don't worry about that for now. Just this thing, this carboxyl group, when you see that on any molecule, it makes things acidic. For example, look below here at the one underneath it. There's a carboxyl on this end. It's on the other side. That gives it acidic properties. There's another carboxyl. They didn't put it in blue, but it's right here. See, there's the carbonyl part. There's the hydroxyl part. They're both attached to that carbon. Right. So at this point, it's just kind of like sight recognition, right? You just look at it, you recognize it, you say, oh, that's a carboxyl. That makes things acidic. Here's another one here. This is the only one with nitrogen. So now you notice the introduction of nitrogen, right? So in biology, when I see a molecule with nitrogen, I'm already thinking protein. So proteins that's another type of there's 4 molecules that we're going to talk about: carbs, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. So when I see nitrogen, I'm thinking protein already. When I see amino, which is a nitrogen with these 2 hydrogens, then that's a dead giveaway. It's a protein. Right? So this thing is a protein. So if you look at this molecule, you've actually see there's 2 functional groups. Here's the amino on this side. And then here's the carboxyl, which they don't have it in blue because they don't want to confuse you, right? But there's a carboxyl here, and then there's an amino. They're both on the same molecule. But right now, they're just trying to show you amino. So amino group makes things basic. So you remember we had like acids and bases. Carboxyl makes things acidic. Amino makes things basic. Amino is the only one with nitrogen in it. And you might be thinking, okay, well, this is a weird molecule because you got something that's acidic on one end and you got something that's basic on the other end. Don't they just kind of like cancel each other out? And yeah, they could. That's your body uses these amino acids for exactly that.
So it'd be considered acidic basic if we would say something about it?
Yeah. Well, you could say both. You could say it's basic and it's acidic in this case because you see both of them on there. But yeah, if I only had the amino on it, you would say basic. If I just had the part that's in blue. But this one has both. So you're like, well, they're both. It's basic and it's acidic. So this is like a buffer. Our body uses these to buffer. So if our body becomes too acidic, the amino part, so like when you have a lot of acid, you have a lot of those H pluses, those protons. You can put those H pluses can get locked in right here in the middle. Like where my pointer is, you can kind of lock them in there and collect them and pull them out of the fluid. So that makes it less acidic. Or you can go the other way. On this other side, if you don't have enough H pluses, enough protons, this H right here will break off as a proton and it'll make things more acidic. So you have that in your blood going on because you want to keep your blood 1 pH. You don't want it to be too acidic and you don't want it to be too basic. So one of the things that your body will use is proteins as like a buffer to try to keep your pH normal. like a balance. But for us in this class for now, this group in blue. This thing in blue here is an amino. So you just kind of look at the molecule and you say, oh, I see the amino. It's basic. It doesn't matter what the rest of the molecule looks like. So don't get hung up on everything else, right? I could have made this, this molecule could be huge, like a massive big molecule. So what? We're only looking at that one little part. We don't care what the rest of the molecule looks like. This is like putting the hat on the Mr. Potato Head. How do you know it's a construction worker versus a cop? So these are like the accessories to put on the potato. And so this is how I know it's like one type of molecule. How do you know it's an amino acid versus how do you know it's a protein versus a lipid or carbohydrate? And the answer is these functional groups. So I'm going to look at different functional groups, and then I know it's a protein, or I'm going to know it's a lipid. It's something like an oil, or it's a sugar. All right, we got two more. This one you're hardly ever going to see. It's called a sulfhydryl, sulfur hydrogen, sulfhydryl. All it is it's the only one with sulfur. And you're going to see it when we talk about proteins. When we talk about proteins, it's important for proteins to have a certain shape. The shape of the protein means everything for the protein. And we'll talk about that. But for now, this sulfhydryl holds the shape of a protein. That's all you need to know. This last one, which is called a phosphate, it's the only one with phosphorus. You're going to see that a lot. You're going to see it when we talk about DNA, RNA. You're also going to see it when we talk about this molecule called ATP. You're going to see this phosphate group, right? Again, we don't really care about the rest of the molecule at this point. We're just talking about these different functional groups which are in blue. But let me ask you guys a question. If you're looking at this right here, this bottom molecule, right? I see a phosphate. Are there any other functional groups that you see on there, even though it's not marked? So I see two others. Well, I see two of the same functional group. So right here and right here, they didn't put it in blue. They're not trying to show it to you, but these are hydroxyls, right?
Yes. I was about to say that.
Whatever this molecule is, like, I know they're saying what it is down here, but I don't know what that means. And we don't care. We're not chemistry. But what we do know is that it is water soluble. Whatever it is, it's water soluble. So don't get thrown off by the molecule itself. We don't know what it is. I mean, it's glycerol phosphate, whatever that is. Who knows, right? But it's water soluble, right? So don't get free like I don't know what's going on here. This thing is too complicated. Nobody knows. None of us knows what it is. So just the blue part. Just the part in blue. So we've got 6 of them, right? And it's just there's no particular property that phosphate has. It's just that when you see a phosphate, you're going to think, okay, there's a good chance it's DNA or RNA or this molecule called ATP, which is like an energy molecule. But we'll talk about that later. So right now, what's the takeaway? What do you need to know? What would you need to know for like a test? You need to know the end part, the part that's in blue. I think on my other video, I might have made it in a different color, right? But it's the same 6, right? You need to know the part that's in blue, and you need to say like one thing about it. So this up here makes things water soluble. This right here, found in carbohydrates. And it comes in, it's 2 forms, right? Aldehyde and ketone. This one makes things acidic. This one makes things basic. This one holds the shape of proteins. And this last one found with DNA and RNA. And that's it. It's just recognizing them. Because I'm going to show you some molecules in a minute that you'll see these. All right, so we'll try to put this in practice. So I'm going to show you some of the I'm going to show you the 4 molecules that we need. I might not get through it today. I don't even know what time it is, but you guys stop me around. If I'm still going at 10:30, somebody like get on and stop me. So.
It's only 9:35.
Oh, really? That's horrible for you guys.
Not really, cause I'm at work.
I know you suck anyway. Man, I don't want to go too fast. This looks a little confusing. I'm gonna see if I can find it in a better way. So let me just jump onto the whole block. Can you guys see my webpage? Let me see if I can find one that's better. All of these are awful. Oh, I like this one. All right. Can you guys see this thing up here?
Very little.
Yes, a little.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, you could see it.
Okay, now I can.
All right. Don't worry about the molecule. Although, look, as like an aside, this is a fat, like this is a lipid, and I know that because it's got long. It's like a long chain of carbons, right? So I'm counting six carbons. I mean, in reality, these things are like 18 carbons long, right? So when I see this long molecule, I'm thinking lipids, but the part in red is the important part. So this is one molecule, whatever it is. We don't really care what it's called. This is another molecule. Like here's one here and here's one here. And we don't actually even care what it's called. The important thing is that I want to attach this one here to this. I want to attach all 3 of these to this molecule here. So these are fatty acids. All 3 of these are fatty acids. I want to attach it to this molecule of glycerol. So so we've got a total of 4 molecules. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to put them all together and make one big molecule. So whenever we do that, we call this dehydration. And you tend to think dehydration, when something gets dehydrated, it like shrivels up and gets smaller. It's not, don't think like that with molecules. It's the opposite. With molecules, dehydration makes them bigger. Because see, I'm going to take 4 smaller molecules and I'm going to put them all together to make a bigger one. Right? But when I do that, I'm going to lose a molecule of water. That's why we call it dehydration. And you can see it circled here in red. So I'm losing 1 hydrogen from this molecule, and I'm losing, it looks like a hydroxyl. I'm losing a hydroxyl from the other molecule. So see, it's like H2O. there's my two H's, H2O, which is water. So this is gone. This part that's in red, it's going to be gone. It's going to leave the molecule. So a molecule of water is going to leave this whole bigger molecule. And I'm going to slide this over to here. Right? So if I come over here, I show you what the new one looks like. So there we are. They're all stuck together. That right where this red oxygen is, they made it red to show you where they came together at. So before it was like this, they were all apart. 3 waters are lost. So that's dehydration. And now we slide it all together. There's the new, now it's just one molecule. It's all joined together. So that means that's dehydration. And that is the same thing the PowerPoint is showing you, but not in a more difficult way. Oh, I passed it. So that's what they're saying. You take an H from one side and a HOOH from the other side, water leaves, and you slide them together, and there's your new molecule. And you could reverse it. You can add water to something, and one H will go to one side, one OH will go to the other side, and you could break it apart. So we call that hydrolysis. Hydro meaning water, and lysis just means like to break or to burst. Because that word lysis, you're going to see that in a lot of other words, right? So when you see lysis in a word, it means to break something or to burst. So here we're hydrolysis, water breaking. So hydrolysis takes a big molecule and makes it into a bunch of smaller ones. So if I wanted to do the opposite, right? If I want to take this molecule here and I want to break it up, I'm going to put a drop of water here, and one H is going to go to this side, or whatever side it went to. One of the H's is going to go to one side. The OH from water is going to go to the other side, and I'm going to split this right here, right? And it'll look like that. So I'm doing the opposite. I'm breaking it up. I'm taking one molecule and I'm breaking it into 4. Hydrolysis. Joining molecules, dehydration. So, makes sense? We don't care about the molecule part. We just care about what is making a bigger one from smaller pieces. And if you look at like the PowerPoint, I shouldn't keep leaving this because every time I leave it, I gotta like start over again. Don't worry about these words, monomer and polymer. I mean, mer means part. That's it. Instead of saying part, they're using the word mer. I don't know why. Mono means 1. Di means 2. And poly means many. That's all it means, many parts. Polymer, many parts. Monomer, 1 part. I don't know why they insist on using the words, but that's all that means. So dehydration takes a bunch of smaller molecules and combines them into a larger molecule. Hydrolysis takes a larger molecule and breaks it up into smaller molecules. That's all it is. All right, with that being said, let's look at some of the 4 molecules we're going to work with in biology. And if you're going to take nutrition, say these molecules are going to come up again. So it would be helpful for you to know about them because whatever I'm telling you for this will come back up in a class like nutrition. Or if you're going to be like a nurse, this comes back up. So the first type of, there's 4, we call them macromolecules. And I'm going to put the lecture up today. The 4 big molecules are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. So we're going to talk about carbs first. Carbohydrates. In fact, I'm going to pull away from this slide for a second. Even though I'm going to have to go back now, but let me see if I can find something better for the internets. I'm just going to type in carbohydrates. Oh, well, these are carbs, okay? So obviously you eat carbs. So like when we're talking about nutrition, you know, things like starch, like corn is a starch, banana is a starch, bread is a starch, rice, right? So you have that. That's a type of carbohydrate. And then also you have things that are sweet. So anything that's sweet, sugar, all the types of sugar, that's a type of carbohydrate. So you've got sugar and you've got starch. Starch doesn't necessarily taste sweet, but it's a carbohydrate. And then you have a third type, which is called fiber. And so anything that's like crunchy, that's fiber. I was looking for the molecule. I guess I got to type it in. Let's look at this one. All right, so, oh, look at this. Like this page just tells you everything. So carbohydrates, we'll look at this one. Carbohydrates, so let's look at this molecule. Here's a carbon skeleton. So I see the carbon skeleton here, a hydrocarbon, but I'm also seeing some functional groups here. So if I look here, there's a functional group, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one there. What are these OHs? You could just say it to yourself. The OHs, hydroxyl. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4. I see some, whether it's 4 or 3 or 5, doesn't matter. There's some, there's more than one. So I'm seeing a few hydroxyls here. And there's my carbonyl. That was the second functional group we learned. So there's one carbonyl, and then there's many hydroxyls. Let's look at the word carbohydrate. Right. So when you look at the word carbohydrate, you're thinking, here's the word hydrate. So when I say to you hydrate, immediately what's coming to mind is like water. Hydrate water. So yeah, water. So think of water, H2O. Now carbo. When I say carbo, what would you think of? Maybe carbon. So it's like water with carbon. And that's what it is. It's like a H2O with a carbon attached. So CH2O. It's always going to be in that ratio. One carbon. For every one carbon, I'm going to find 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. So if we go back to this right here, how many carbons are there? 5. So now I already know how many oxygens I'm going to have. I'm also going to have 5 oxygens. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to have double the amount of hydrogens. So I should, if I count these, it's going to be 10. So this is a 1 to 2 to 1. So it's not CH2O in this case, it's C5H10O5. 1 to 2 to 1. It's that ratio. You'll see ribose, but the big ones that you're really going to see are these 3. Well, more than 3, but these are all 6 carbons. So we call these monosaccharides. Saccharide is going to mean sugar. When you see the word saccharide, that means sugar. And I'll show that to you on another slide. I mean, the spelling of it. But mono meaning one, it's a single molecule. This is a single molecule. That's a single molecule. That's a single molecule. They all have something similar. They're all C6H12O6, 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. That's the only one you have to remember that you're going to come across if you're going into something with medicine. C6H12O6. So they'll put it in two different ways. So C6H12O6, that means to me like glucose or like a sugar. So sometimes when you're looking at like IVs, they're giving people like IVs with nutrition inside of it. They call it like a TPN or something like that. You might see it on there, C6H12O6. That means glucose. That's blood sugar, right? So they're sticking it in the IV bag. So they're putting it like that. Otherwise, or they might put like this. They might just take off the numbers because they know you know what it means. So they might just put CHO. That just means, that's probably glucose. It's probably a carbohydrate, right? So sometimes people will, instead of writing the word carbohydrate, they just put CHO, and they don't put like C6H12O6. They just take the numbers off because they're being lazy. So CHO will mean like a sugar. So another thing that people do, and I'm doing it right now, is that they take the word sugar and carbohydrate and they interchange them. And that's not correct. I do it myself. I'll call a carbohydrate a sugar. That's not necessarily the case, because like fiber, like dietary fiber, that's a carbohydrate. It's not a sugar. I shouldn't call that a sugar. It's not. Starch is not a sugar. But we use the word sugar and carbohydrates like interchangeably, right? So if people do that, but these are all monosaccharides. So there's 3 monosaccharides that I want you to know. They happen to be on this slide: glucose, galactose, fructose. You've heard of glucose before. Blood glucose, right? Blood sugar. So that's what it is. Do I want you to know the molecule, what it looks like? No. What I want you to do is be able to look at this molecule and say, well, it's some kind of carbohydrate. I don't know what it is. You don't have to know what it is. Just that, okay, I see hydroxyl. I see hydroxyls. I see carbonyl. It's a carbohydrate. If you want to make sure, you're like, okay, I see 6 carbons. I'm going to see 6 hydrogens also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And it's going to be 12 hydrogens. All right, this thing's a carbohydrate. That's all that I care about. I'm not going to be like, is this one glucose or galactose? Oh, I don't know. I don't know myself. How are you supposed to know? But the words, the 3 types of monosaccharides, I do want you to know. You've heard of glucose before, and you've heard of fructose before, like high fructose corn syrup, right? So fructose you've heard of. Fructose is like a plant sugar. Glucose is the one you're going to see the most, and that's a common sugar. We talk about glucose all the time. Somebody that has low blood sugar, we have like these tubes of glucose we can give it, like we just tell them to open their mouth and we squeeze it in their mouth, right? Or you can give them a shot of like DM50 or whatever. You're giving them glucose. Fructose comes from plants. Galactose, that's kind of a new word, but if you look here, here's the word galactose. So you've heard of lactose before. So it's lactose with GA in front of it. So galactose. So hopefully you can remember that. So you know glucose, you've heard of fructose before, you've heard of lactose, but so just GA lactose, right? So those are the 3 monosaccharides. So all your food that tastes sweet, it comes in two forms. Well, all the foods that are sweet are sugar. Sugar comes in two forms. One form is monosaccharide. And to give you an example of a sugar that you've tasted in food is the high fructose corn syrup, right? That's fructose. So if I were to take any of these two and join them together, I'm going to make what's called a disaccharide. So di meaning two. So let's say I take glucose and I put it together with a fructose. So I'm going to take this molecule here and I want to join it with this molecule here. Well, how am I going to join it? Well, I don't know where I'm going to join it, but I know how. One side's going to lose an H and one side's going to lose an HO. I don't know which one's going to be which, but one of these is going to lose an OH, one of these is going to lose an H, and then the two molecules are going to join together right at that point. So let's say we join it, let's join it here. This OH is going to be gone, and that H is going to be gone, and we'll slide them together right there. Now it'll be a disaccharide. I've taken the glucose and I stuck it with the fructose. So now it's a different sugar. That's actually table sugar. That's what regular table sugar is. It's called sucrose. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. Show you the disaccharides. So glucose, fructose, galactose, right? And I'm going to start putting them together to make disaccharides. All right, we don't deal with these in this class, but you're going to find in chemistry that really all of these molecules are in like a ring form. So it's like I took this and let's say I bent it and made it a circle. Like I took the carbons and I just made it into a circle, right? So I think it's easier when we leave it like this, but really what you're going to find is that they're shaped like this. Don't worry about it for this class. And to be honest, you're probably not going to deal with it for anatomy and physiology or micro. If you have to take organic chemistry, if you're that unlucky, deal with it then, right? Or if you're taking chemistry, right, then deal with it at that point. But for here, you know, for now, what you need to know is that there's 3 disaccharides. You don't need to know what they look like, but you need to know what they're made from. So in one case, we're taking one glucose and we're attaching it to another glucose. So 2 glucose molecules stuck together makes a molecule of maltose. Malt, like the Whoppers candy, when you take the chocolate off of it, that malted sugar in the middle, that's malt. That's maltose. That's just 2 glucoses stuck together, right? Malted sugar, like the middle of the Whoppers candy, that tastes different than table sugar, right? There's a slight taste difference. They're both sweet, but there's a slight difference in taste, right? Table sugar is sucrose. So you see, sucrose is made from glucose and fructose. If you ever want to taste the difference, if you go to like International Store, Hong Kong Market, or that International Market in Metairie, you could buy glucose. They sell it over in the baking section. I don't know, some other stores might sell it too. You can buy it. And then you could buy the high fructose corn syrup in the baking section too. So you could taste the difference between the 2 sugars. But anyway, glucose and glucose makes maltose. Glucose and fructose makes sucrose. I know it's a lot of information. We've got 3 monosaccharides and 3 disaccharides. Maltose is a disaccharide. Sucrose is a disaccharide. The third one, which is not on here, is glucose plus galactose. That's going to make lactose. So glucose and galactose will make lactose. So we've got now 3 disaccharides: lactose, maltose, sucrose. Lactose, milk sugar. You've heard of that before. Maltose, malt liquor. Sucrose, regular table sugar. They're all disaccharides. So you have 3 disaccharides that you should know and 3 monosaccharides that you should know. They all taste sweet, so they're all sugar. You will see them in, like, if you take anatomy and physiology, you'll see those words. Because, well, you'll see them, just trust me. And even like, even when you work in a hospital, they have IVs with maltose, they have IVs with sucrose, glucose. You're gonna run into this, right? This is a major need of your body. You need sugar, right? So this is a part. Carbohydrates are one of the 4 molecules that make our bodies. So we have monosaccharides, disaccharide. Here's the spelling up here at the top. Di meaning 2, and then saccharide is like sugar. Now we have something called a polysaccharide. So polysaccharide is going to be like each one of these little green things is like a glucose molecule. So a monosaccharide was one molecule. Disaccharide was 2 molecules put together. Polysaccharide is like hundreds or thousands of molecules put together. And I'm going to give you 3 different forms that you need to know. So each one had 3. 3 monosaccharides, 3 disaccharides, 3 polysaccharides. So the first one is starch. The other name for starch is amylose. Notice that all these names are ending with OSE. Right? So if you see a word that ends with OSE, it's a sugar. Learn all these little shortcuts, by the way, because that's the secret to biology or medicine and even chemistry. Learn the little words, and even if you've never seen the word on a test, just by reading the word, you could figure it out and get the question right? Because that's all it is. It's just a language. And when I see really super long words that I've never seen before, I don't get nervous. I actually get relaxed. It's the short words that I hate, that I don't know. The long word, that's excellent because it's made of a bunch of small words, and it's just like, the word stare, or the word rain, the word coat. So if I give you a word called raincoat, right, even if you never saw it, you know what it is, right? So that's all it is. Like, it's just medical terminology. So if you ever get a chance to take medical terminology, like really, don't blow off the class. It'll help you like cheat your way through other classes in the future, right? Because that's it. That's why you can find people, they just rattle off these long words, acetylcholinesterase. Like, oh, how does he know? It's a bunch of small words that are stuck together. It's not impressive, right? There's no special secret that those people have. They're not smart. They're just putting together small words. They've learned the language, and that's all they're doing. So anyway, OSE, that's going to tell you in any word it's a sugar, in which often that's all you need to know to answer the question. But anyway, amylose, it's starch. Starch is 1 polysaccharide. Starch is how plants store their carbohydrates, because carbohydrates are energy, right? Sugar is energy, right? There's calories in sugar, right? So that means it's energy. So how do plants store it? They store it in the form of starch. And that's what we're eating, right? We're eating the sugar that the plants stored for winter. We also store sugar just like plants. Plants store sugar. Animals, like humans, we store sugar too. We call it glycogen, a word you're going to see very often. Right? That's my talking to you and moving my hand like this in front of the camera. I'm using glycogen right now for that. Right? Glycogen, your body is making glycogen all day, and your body is breaking up glycogen all day. It's the main form of energy that your body uses. Your body uses carbs for energy more than it uses other things. That's your body's favorite source of fuel, carbohydrates. So if you think about what you eat for breakfast, you had maybe cereal or pancakes, biscuits, bread. Most of you probably ate nothing because you have bad habits like me. But you're eating carbs, and all the whatever you ate. Let's say a pancake, right? You ate a pancake, that's starch. Your body's eventually going to break it all down, and it's going to end up in your blood as blood sugar. So you're going to eventually break it all down to glucose. So the glucose is going to be in your blood, and your blood sugar is going to like go up and stuff. You can't keep letting your blood sugar get higher and higher and higher. So you got to do something with all that blood sugar. Your body takes all that blood sugar and it stores it. It packs it all together in your muscles. It stores it as glycogen. So in your muscle and your liver, you have like these. Let's say it's like sugar cubes, right? You have like sugar cubes of glycogen, and throughout the day, whenever you need sugar for your blood, you just break off a little sugar granule off the sugar cube and you put it into your blood. Right? So you're constantly adjusting the amount of glucose in your blood by breaking up glycogen or making glycogen. All right, so glycogen is how we store, this is the point, glycogen is how we store our sugar. Just like plants store it as starch, we store it as glycogen. So we have starch, we have glycogen, now we need one more. Fiber. We call fiber, here's the word, cellulose. See there again, every word is ended with OSE except glycogen. Right, cellulose, it's fiber. See, and we only find this in plants. Plants don't have like a skeleton, obviously, so they need some way to stand up. You know, how does a tomato plant stand up? Its cells, like these are the cells, it's like a picture of the cells. Their cells have like this strong wall around it that's made of carbohydrate. It's made of cellulose, right? So their walls have like a strong, they have walls actually. Our cells don't have walls. Our cells are like balloons. They expand and they shrink and they can pop. Our cells can get too big and pop. Plant cells, they have like that balloon, but it's like a box around it. So the balloon can never pop because you're blowing up the balloon inside of a box. So the balloon can only get as big as the box, but it'll never pop. That's plant cells. But they use the box things. They're like bricks. They pack them all in there next to each other, and that holds the plant upright. So that's cellulose. You might have heard of like newspaper, they call it cellulose, or like they say cellulose insulation. That's all it is newspaper pretty much, or paper that they've shredded. All right, but that's what paper is, right? It's just plant cells. So cellulose is the third kind of polysaccharide. That's not for energy. That's just for like structure. Wood is cellulose. Right. So, there's a fourth kind, but you don't have to know it. It's called chitin. If you ever wanted to know what like crawfish shells are made from, they're made from chitin polysaccharide. But anyway, 3. Starch, amylose, glycogen, and cellulose. I'm going to see what time it is. Wow, we've only got an hour. That was just carbohydrates, and that was like the longest one of the 4 that we're going to discuss. So it's like part of me wants to get through lipids, and then part of me is thinking that I'm giving you way too much information and you're not going to be able to. Although I will say I've put all this on other lectures, right? So if you look under pages or if you look under modules, I don't have it on here. If you look under pages or you look under modules, you'll see that you'll see a lecture called macromolecules, and you'll see one called functional groups. So it's there, right? You've got your book, you've got other lectures. Does anyone have any questions? I know I'm giving you like a lot of stuff.
No.
Yeah, it's a lot of information, so I'm sorry. That's part of the problem with Fastlane. You know, if we were a regular semester, I would have been done 20 minutes ago.
I just plan on going back later, watching this again, and taking down all the notes.
Yeah, that's a way to do it too.
Me too. I plan on doing the same thing by me working and stuff. I was focused, but I gotta be focused to really understand everything. So I'm gonna go back and look at it.
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. I know, and like you gotta work. Can't not work. All right, I'll spend like 10 minutes on lipids. I don't have a lot like this. The carbohydrate one, that was like the hardest one. I'll do lipids, and then I'm just gonna stop for there. And because I know it's a lot of information.
I figured if you go through everything you post as video-wise and take down all the important stuff, that should help us toward the test.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm making the test questions off of the PowerPoints. And
Okay.
like the next test, the exam, is not going to be multiple choice, but I'll ask questions like I'm going to ask you, name 3 disaccharides, or name 3 monosaccharides, or what is, just short questions. Which functional group makes things water soluble, or which functional group makes things acidic, something like that, right? But it's all off of the videos.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah, I mean, if the videos I'm talking about stuff that's in the book. I'm following the book. But I mean, if you have a choice, like you only have enough time to really study one thing, the videos. In fact, maybe even the videos that I already made would give you your best, bang for the buck. If you can only study one thing, that'll probably take care of it.
Okay, because I'm breaking down this class with the notes and the PowerPoints and your videos, and also the lab with the book online.
Yeah, they should all overlap. That's the idea, that they're like reinforced. But some people, it gets overwhelming, and it's just too much stuff, right? And in that case, just pick one method of instruction, and just, if anything, you could use this lecture to like make notes. Okay, he's talking about carbohydrates, he's talking about lipids, just so you know. Because you can see, like, for example, I spent a lot of time on carbohydrates. So then that must be something that's important that I'm going to ask about if I spent so much time on it. So fats are not as difficult. We're going to talk about two types of, all right, so lipids, we're going to talk about two types of lipids. Lipids don't mix with water. So if you just think about things that don't mix with water, fats don't mix with water. So like bacon fat and butter and things like that, steak fat, it doesn't mix with water. If you try to mix it with water, it's going to like float to the top. Oils, car oil, you know, or more practically, olive oil, canola oil, whatever. Those don't mix with water either. Those are lipids. Oils and fats. We call them, in biology, or really deal with triglycerides. So there's two molecules that we deal with. One, triglyceride. Two is called a phospholipid. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about triglycerides first. Here they're calling it something else. Don't worry about it. It's a triglyceride. This word comes from tri, meaning three fatty acids. How do I know these are fatty acids? The dead giveaway is look how long they are. So you don't even have to really think about it. You don't have to say, well, what functional group do I see in here? You know, oh, there's the carboxyl. Really, you just say, this is long. That's a fat. They look like that. Fatty acids all look like this. They're even longer. They're like 18 carbons long. This is probably, I don't know, this might be 18. I don't know how long this is, but they're long, right? So it's a dead giveaway. Why are they like up and down? Don't worry about it. This is like a shorthand way to, like a shorter way of writing it. You don't have to worry about it. But, you know, all these dashes are covalent bonds. But anyway, three fatty acids attached to this molecule called glycerol. That's where the word glyceride comes from. So tri comes from three fatty acids. Glyceride comes from the word glycerol. So it's three fatty acids, tri, attached to glycerol, triglyceride. And that's it. And there's two different forms that they come in. And one form is a saturated fat, and one form is an unsaturated fat. And then here's kind of the differences between them. There's three differences between saturated and unsaturated. One difference is saturated are solid at room temperature. So butter, for example, is solid at room temperature. Corn oil is liquid at room temperature. Unsaturated fats, for the most part, are from plants. And saturated fats are from animals. So any fat that comes, you know, beef, lard, butter, it's all from animals, and it's all solid at room temperature. The third and most important difference they didn't put in this PowerPoint, so I'm going to show you a picture of it. Right here. The third and most important one is the, oh, really? Not going to give me the full screen. Double covalent bond. All right, I can't make this any bigger. But right here where it's pointing to is a double covalent bond. So you have a carbon. Remember, carbons can only make 4 bonds. So in red here, there's 2 bonds right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't have another bond to put a hydrogen here. I have to let that hydrogen go. Because right here, if you make this a double bond, you've got to let this one go. Or you got to let one of them go. Same thing here. If this carbon is using 2 of its arms to hold on to a carbon, then you're going to have to let go of something, right? If I'm holding on to something and I want to grab with both hands, I got to let that thing go. And that's what happened here. That's why you see there's hydrogens missing here. They should be there, but they're missing because these two carbons are using two bonds to hold on to each other. So now you got a hole here. There's like a space here. And so two things happen. One, this molecule bent. You see how it's like bent? So it looks like it's easier to break it because it's already bent. So it's going to be easier to break. And then two, there's an opening here. There's like a hole in there. So it's easier to get in there and break that molecule apart. It's not saturated with hydrogens. That's what saturated means. So this one's harder to break apart. So the thought behind it is that it's harder to break apart in your body too. So saturated fats are look like harder to break down and like maybe more likely to clog your arteries and stuff. But the third difference is the double covalent bond. So the unsaturated fats have a double covalent bond. And that's triglycerides. This one here, we're going to talk about even more. It's like more common, phospholipid. Let me show you the other picture here first, and then I'll come back to this. All right, you see this? This is a triglyceride. So imagine we take one of these yellow fatty acids and got rid of it. So two fatty acids, but the third one, we're going to cut it off, and I'm going to put a phosphate group in there, a phosphate functional group. So now let's look at this one again. So right here's the glycerol. One tail, this is like shorthand, right? This is a fatty acid, just like the last photo I showed you. 1, 2. The third one's been cut off. And it's here instead, phosphate. What's important here, because you're not going to see like this molecule, it's not written like this, it's written like this over here. So you see that symbol? That symbol is phospholipid. So what's important here is that this part in yellow, or this part here in yellow, it likes water. I mean, it likes oil. You know, we call it lipid soluble, right? It mixes with oil. Obviously, it's a fatty acid, so it's going to mix with oil. But this phosphate group mixes with water. So here's the molecule. This part of the molecule will mix with anything that's like a fat or an oil. If I want to mix it with any lipid, it'll attach. But this part here attaches to water. So you have one molecule that's water soluble and lipid soluble. Or another word we use here, hydrophobic. Oh, wrong word. Hydrophobic meaning afraid of water. It likes lipids. Hydrophilic, philic means to like. Phobic means to be afraid of. Philic means to like. So part of it is hydrophilic. It likes water. The other part of it is hydrophobic. It doesn't like water. So you can, one molecule has both parts on it. This is like what your dish soap is made from, right? One part, the hydrophilic head grabs onto the water. The other part grabs onto that grease that's on your pots, and you can mix water and oil with it. So, however, in our body, like where does this come into play? Right here. This is what our cells are made from. Like the membrane around our cells are made from a phospholipid. There's two layers of them. So like this is everything outside the cell in blue here. This is everything inside the cell in blue. And it's like two layers of phospholipids. The parts that like the fat are turned in on themselves. So, yeah, so our cells are not like plant cells. I said like our cells are kind of like the membrane around our cells is very weak. right? So you're going to see it a lot once we start talking about cells, this idea of phospholipid bilayer, which means two layers of phospholipids. So that's two types, phospholipids and triglycerides. That was a lot of information. I can't give you, you guys got to be tired. So I'm going to stop the recording there. And do you guys have any questions?
No.
I'm going to let you guys